of
Stellaris.
No matter what comes through that gate, you will stand your ground.
So you want to play competitive multiplayer games of Stellaris, but you're not quite sure where to start. In this video, I'm going to run you through 8 great tips that are going to help improve your play so that you can take on other players in competitive multiplayer Stellaris games. Let's dive in. Number 1. Choose your flavor of meta civilization. So you're going to want to choose an empire build that you're going to run with, and there are really 3 flavors you can pick between. Void Dwellers, you're going to want to have your 3 habitats, pump out a whole bunch of science, and then alloys to get a big fleet up. Machine World Hive Mind robots, you're going to be able to expand initially and get lots and lots of alloys and research in the early game to get you that fleet for 2230 or the war start. And finally, where it's allowed, Necroids. If Necroids are viable, you definitely want to go for that one as well. That's one of the 3 choices you have available. Expand carefully. A 4th world, unless it's a Gaia world, can be more of a drain on resources than a help. So you definitely want to grab your 2 habitable worlds if you are playing a Machine World robot or a Necroid. If you're a Void Dweller, this isn't a problem. You're going to start with 3 habitats. By 2230, you won't have built a 4th habitat because you'll have built a kick-ass fleet instead. Specialize your planets. You want to make one of your planets a technology-focused planet, and of the other 2, you want an alloy foundry and an energy-producing world. Now, your home world will usually be a good candidate for a technology world. The other 2, you just want to see which districts are available, which has the most energy districts, and you should probably make the other one your alloy foundry. And when I say specialize, I really do mean specialize. On your home planet, you're probably going to want to replace or remove all the other buildings you start with on that world. Consider your policies carefully. At the start of the game, your diplomatic policy is going to be set to expansion. If you are Necroids or Void Dwellers, that's pretty useless to you. You want to change that over to something like Isolationist. The reason for that is you're going to find it a lot better to have an extra plus 10% unity production and a 15% bonus to admin cap, rather than a slight increase to your colony development speed and a slight reduction to your expansion. If you go back to tip number 2, you actually don't want to be over expanding anyway. You're also going to want to look at your economic and trade policies. For economic policy, you're going to want to maximize the number of alloys you're producing whilst minimize your production of consumer goods. Whereas with trade, you're going to want to convert that trade into consumer goods and therefore not have to produce them. If you're enjoying this video, please leave a like. If we get to 700 likes covering the main 3 meta builds I mentioned at the start of this video and a general outline of the build order and strategy for those. Completing the supremacy tradition tree is an absolute priority. You want to complete that before the war start at 2230 or whatever year time you have the war start, so that not only can you use all of the bonuses, but probably more importantly, you can set your war doctrine policy, which you also probably want to set to hit and run for that first initial engagements when destroyers and cruisers are going to be the main ship classes on the battlefield. Your first tradition is probably going to be discovery, though you may open up the domination or prosperity for clear tile blockers or the plus 20% mining base output respectively, even though you won't then go on to complete those tradition trees. Focus on your technology. You're going to want to unlock and be producing rare resources, not only for the edicts, which you're going to want to set off before the wars start for additional shields and kinetic weapon output, for instance, but also for your buildings. They're going to require special resources or rare resources, and the higher level weapons also require rare resources to build. Next, you're going to want to unlock at least destroyer technology by year 25. That's going to be so that you can build up a fleet ready for that war that will be coming at 2230. If you can make it, cruisers would be better, but that does require quite a lot of technology output. Sometimes as well, you might not get there with port rolling. And finally, you do need to focus on advanced weapon technologies as well. That's advanced weapons, computers, reactors, and sensors. Those are going to be much more important than your defensive technologies. The reason for that is a small boost to your weapons output of around 20 to 30% is much more impactful than a 10 to 20% boost to just your shields or just your armor, given that a large amount of your hit points are going to be coming from your hull, not just those defensive systems. You should begin building your fleet about 3 to 4 years before wartime, around the year 26 or 27. This will minimize upkeep costs, and you're going to need to produce a lot of alloys to build this fleet. If you can minimize your upkeep cost before starting the war, you're going to have more alloys, and therefore you can have an even larger fleet. It's important to note as well, you should have a whole bunch of energy saved up and/or minor artifacts to carry you through the war, because you're probably going to be running something of an energy deficit before you start the war, because you're going to need enough ships. And when I say enough ships, I'm talking at least 10,000 fleet power by 2230. If you can get 15 to 20, that's a very, very healthy number. The eighth and final tip isn't a tip for any individual strategy to use in your engagement or in the competitive multiplayer game. Instead, this tip is practice. Practice makes perfect. You want to get your build order nailed in single player using common multiplayer settings like 0.5 technology cost with 2 guaranteed habitable worlds and no AI around you. You're going to want to practice until you can get a 10 to 15,000 fleet power fleet up by 2230. This practice is what you're going to be drawing on in the initial part of your competitive multiplayer game, because you really do want to survive those initial engagements to get to the mid game and the late game. You don't want to be one of those empires that is eaten or gobbled up by a neighbor. That wraps it up for my 8 top tips. If you have anything you think that I've missed, if there's anything you disagree with, please leave a comment down below. I would love to hear from you.